Fran was, but yeah. Oh, you're recording to the cloud, and that's why it gave me a weird message. Okay.
Oh, so I cannot.
We should all see a red button record.
Well, I will stop and record to my computer.
Oh no, you can. It's fine. The icon changed on mine. You can record wherever you want.
Oh, okay. Oh, no problem. I'll just put on my computer.
Okay, Wendy is here. So everybody is here now. Hi, Wendy. Can you hear us? Yeah, so I would like to invite the teacher, Mr. Ang Chu Hong, to start the lecture today. Okay. And before that, give me 30 seconds. I want to take a group photo, okay? So everybody, please get ready. You can snapshot your screen as well at the same time, okay? So everybody, please smile at your camera for at least 5 seconds, okay?
I didn't put my makeup on. Yes. This is my worst face.
Everybody smile. Very good. Have you taken and on your computer too?
The screenshot. I don't know.
Okay, never mind. I'll post it to Slack at the end of the class. Okay. Okay. I'll let the teacher start his talk, please.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Or rather, good day. It's morning in Malaysia. I'm glad I'm given the opportunity to meet all of you to share about Buddhism. The topic that we are going to cover will be humanistic Buddhism. But before that, I would like to stress a few points. First thing is, I hope that this learning process will be enjoyable to all of you. It must be enjoyable. And secondly, it must be enriching. You must gain something from this series of talks. And lastly, it must be evaluable. It must be able to evaluate you. So there are basically 3 E's here: enjoyable, enriching, and also evaluable. I know you don't like the last part, but in any of these academic courses, they will want to evaluate you. So you have to go through the examination. But I hope the learning process would be enjoyable to you. And therefore, I would expect you to interact with me whenever necessary. When you feel like you want to ask some questions, you may do so. Certain questions you may leave it to the end of the lecture, but certain questions, just a little bit of clarification required, you may inquire on the spot. Okay, another thing is on the schedule. The timetable I have given to Reverend Konyan is just a rough schedule without much of because I don't have the previous experience of lecturing for 48 hours on one particular topic. So it is just my rough estimate. So we will take it as it comes along. We will move as we come along. So we may not be following exactly the schedule. Sometimes we may be ahead, sometimes we may be a little bit lag behind. So now I'm going to talk about humanistic Buddhism. Now, the syllabus for this diploma course is actually talking about humanistic movement, Buddhism as a movement that started in China, said to be initiated by Reverend Tai Shi way back in the 1900s. But what I'm going to do now is not just to need to talk about the movement, but we will begin by talking about what is humanistic Buddhism. Is Buddhism a humanistic Buddhism? So to begin with, I'd like to share this screen here. Okay, what is humanistic Buddhism? Okay. Actually, all of us are aware. I can put it on the slideshow mode. There are many labels of Buddhism. Okay. I think all of you are very familiar with Mahayana and Vajrayana and Theravada. Formerly, Theravada was called Hinayana. But in the 1950 World Fellowship of Buddhist Conference, we all agreed that we should not call people Hinayana. Because the word Hina is not only small vehicle, but it also means inferior vehicle. Hina means inferior. So it was all agreed. You can be big, that's called Mahayana. And the small one, we call it Theravada, which means the Theras or the elders. So one is big, the other one is old. So everybody is happy about that. Then we have recent terms like lay Buddhism, and then you have socially engaged Buddhism, and then we have humanistic Buddhism. In fact, we have so many other terms, you know, etc., etc. The question is, why so many labels? And why are we talking about humanistic Buddhism? There are many labels. Actually, is to denote certain emphasis, mainly to denote different emphasis and to be to differentiate from the rest. So, for example, lay Buddhism would emphasize on lay Buddhists being able to play a leading role in Buddhism, and not only just the Sangha. So it's a matter of emphasis. But what is humanistic Buddhism? I think before we go very deep into this movement, humanistic Buddhism is a movement, first we must understand whether Buddhism itself is a humanistic religion. Is Buddhism a humanistic Buddhism, or is Buddhism a humanistic system of thought? This is what we want to discuss today, this morning, tonight. So to discuss this topic, I have identified 6 areas where we will scrutinize and see whether Buddhism is a humanistic system of thought. Okay. First one, we will look at the founder, the Buddha. We will look at the Buddha, and then we will look at Buddhism as a system of thought. And then we look at the teaching in more details, and what are the bases of saying that Buddhism is a humanistic Buddhism. And being humanistic Buddhism means we must carry that out in our daily living. Then we will talk about daily living. And then, like it or not, Buddhism, whether you call it a system of thought or a philosophy or a way of life and whatnot, it is a religious institution today. So we want to look at it as a religious institution, whether it is a theistic religious institution or otherwise. So let's go one by one. First, we look at the Buddha. Who is the Buddha? Perhaps some of you here might like to venture to answer, who is the Buddha? Who is the Buddha? Anyone? Anyone would like to venture a short reply to me? Who is the Buddha? Do you hear me? Huh?
Yeah, we hear you. I think we're all just afraid to answer. So.
Yeah, you hear me, yeah? You hear me. So, okay, because we are studying Buddhism, we want to know who is the Buddha. And you are in the West, maybe when you say you are following Buddhism, people will ask you, who is the Buddha? What will be the simple answer you give?
Simple answer, I would say, is the founder of Buddhism. Yeah, that's about as simple as I could phrase it.
Okay.
Fully enlightened?
The awakened one.
The awakened one. Yeah. The meaning of Buddha, The meaning of Buddha means awaken. Okay, awakened one. And what do we mean by the awakened one? Anybody else?
He discovered that life is suffering and that there's a path to cessation of suffering. And he walked that path for us so he could turn the wheel of the Dharma so we could all try to find the end of suffering ourselves. He had awakened to the illusion of life and discovered his true nature.
Yeah, it's a great teacher that shows the way out of suffering. Okay,
He being
anybody else?
Shakyamuni?
Huh?
Shakyamuni.
Sakyamuni Buddha. Sakya is his client, his clan. The Murni is the holy man of the client of Sakya. So, okay, anybody else? Who is the Buddha?
No?
I'm taking the class slowly so that we don't have to digest too much. We don't have to input too much and digest too much. We take this class relaxingly and enjoyably. Okay. Anybody else?
To me, Buddha is just a human. That's the way I look at it.
It's a human, correct. Good answer. Buddha is just human. But is it correct or not to say that the Buddha is just human? Now let me tell you a story about how the Buddha introduced himself. Okay. There was a Brahmin by the name of Drona. One day, Drona was walking along the street and he saw the Buddha. And the Buddha, with his shaven head, with his radiant skin, his skin was said to be radiant, very dignified. And Drona, the Brahmin, was very impressed. Now, before we go further, do you believe that the Buddha's skin was radiant? How many will say, yes, put up your hands. The Buddha's skin was radiant. Actually, if you have a lot of metta and karuna in you, your skin should be radiant. Because when you have a lot of metta and karuna and a lot of positive virtues in your body would secrete some kind of enzyme, and your skin naturally become very radiant. If you don't believe me, you look at young couples in love. Most of them, the skins are very radiant. But of course, after marriage, after 7 or 8 years, all the radiance are gone because there is not so much love anymore, you see. So it is true that Buddha, to me, I believe that he was with a radiant skin. And in fact, you can check your own skin, although some of us here are above 60, I think your skin are still radiant to some extent.
Seems
So
to be
when
said about pregnant women quite a bit.
Okay. So Drona asked the Buddha when he saw, he said, when I look at you, you are so radiant and you are so dignified. May I know who are you? Are you a Deva? Deva means gods. Are you a Deva? The Buddha said, no, I'm not a god. Then, are you a Gandhava? Gandhava refers to a heavenly musician.
When introducing himself, the Buddha said, I am
Then the
not
Buddha
a
said
god,
no. Then he said, are you a Yakha?
or deity.
Then the Buddha said no. Then he asked, are you a Manusa? Manusa means, in Malay words here means Manusia. It means human beings. Are you a Manusia? Then the Buddha said no. So just now you say the Buddha was a human being. The Buddha himself said no. Then the Drona was confused. So he asked the Buddha, so who are you? Then the Buddha replied him, Abhinneyang abhinyantam bhave tabancha bhavintam paha taban pahinam me tasma buddhosmi pramana. It means Abhinneyang abhinyantam means understood fully what needs to be understood. Okay. Bhave tabancha bhavintam, developed fully what needs to be developed. Paha taban pahinam me, eradicated completely what needs to be eradicated. Tasma Buddhosmi Brahmana. Therefore, Brahmin, I am the Buddha. So from his self-introduction by the Buddha, then we know who is the Buddha. The Buddha is not a Deva, it's not a Yakha, it's not a Gandhava, it's not a Manusya. He is simply the Buddha. And by definition, he is all-knowing, or abhinayang abhinyantam. He knows what needs to be known. And he developed all the virtues, metta, karuna, mudita, upekha, all the compassion, the virtues to the highest. And he eradicated completely all the defilements, greed, hatred, and delusion. So now who is the Buddha? Correct, the Buddha is a fully awakened one. It's true the Buddha was a human being, but when he attained the Buddhahood, we acknowledge him as the Buddha, not so much as acknowledge him as a normal human being. Because a normal human being would still be endowed with greed, hatred, and delusion. Whereas if you are a Buddha, you are free from greed, hatred, and delusion. So if people ask you who is the Buddha, well, we can say he was a human being, but he has become a Buddha. And who is the Buddha? The Buddha is a fully awakened one. So we must understand this correctly, so that we don't have to always rely on negative expression of who is the Buddha. Normally when people ask who is the Buddha, in East Asia, we always say, well, he is not a god. Why should we be bothering whether he's a god or not a god? The Buddha himself did not claim to be a god, but the Buddha himself is a human being who has gained full enlightenment. So this is the Buddha. And by this definition, we know that he is quite, I would say, very humanistic in this aspect. There is another story. You know, sometimes we say we want to see the Buddha, or some people say, I have seen the Buddha. There was a Brahmin by the name of Vakali. This Vakali, he admired the Buddha so much that he came to the Buddha and he became a monk. After becoming a monk, he spent most of his time sitting in front of the Buddha, watching the Buddha. Just watch the Buddha. Then one day the Buddha looked at him and said, Vakali, what are you looking at? Then Vakali said, Bhante, I admire your body so much. Every time I come and sit here, I feel so happy. So I'm watching your body. Then the Buddha said, Vakali, you are foolish one. What is there to see inside this body? This filthy body, this filthy body of mine is full of shit, full of urine, full of mucus, full of sweat, blood, and all the dirty and filthy things. There's nothing for you to see in my body, this physical body. Then the Buddha says, Yoko Vakali Dhamma Passati, So Mam Passati. Yomam Passati, So Dhammam Passati. Yoko Vakali say, Dhamma Passati, So Mam Passati. When you see the Dhamma, then you see me. Okay? Yomam Passati, So Dhammam Passati. When you see the me, then you see the Dhamma. So it's very important for us to realize that if you really want to see the Buddha, you have to understand what is Buddhahood. We must understand the Dhamma. Okay? So from this story also, it's very interesting to note that even the Buddha described his own body as something very filthy, you know. So we cannot understand why some people are still so fond of looking for the Buddha or the Buddha's relic. So From this story, we come to know that the Buddha, as an enlightened human being, he is not an agent of God or a representation of God or a messenger of God. Okay? The great British philosopher Bertrand Russell said, of all the great religious teachers in the world, I admire only the Buddha. Why? Because he did not claim to be son of God or agent of God or messenger of God. Okay? The Buddha admitted that he was a human being who strived to achieve the highest level that human beings can attain. And the Buddha to us is a teacher. He's not a savior. Who saved us? We save ourselves. We have to save ourselves, not the Buddha to save us. But the Buddha as a teacher show us the way how to save ourselves. So from here you can see that the Buddhism actually is a very humanistic Buddhism. The Buddha, the founder himself, is very humanistic. Okay? This is the Pali version of the words that I chanted to you just now. So if you like, you can have them recorded. Now, then there are people who will argue that, well, you say the Buddha is an enlightened human being, but I see you people put Buddha images here and there, and then you offer flowers, joysticks, incense, etc., to worship the Buddha. Now, there are a few clarifications we need to know. First, in Buddhism, we did not say we believe in God or we believe in the Buddha. We did not say that. We say we take refuge, tiratana, in the triple gem. Tisarana, okay, tisarana, refuge in the triple gem, tiratana. We take refuge. We don't use the word believe. And there's a reason. Because belief actually is very much characteristics of Abrahamic religion. In the Abrahamic religions, when we say Abrahamic religion, we are referring to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They all come from the same root of Abraham. So in the Abrahamic religions, you stress a lot of belief. Because there are so many things that actually you do not know, but you choose to believe. But in Buddhism, we say we take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. We don't use the word belief. Why do we don't use the word belief? There is a reason for it. Now, when you say you believe something, actually you are saying that you do not know. Am I right? Because you do not know, that's why you choose to believe. Okay? You do not know whether there is a policeman outside the temple now. But if you choose to believe, you believe so. And some people will say, I don't bother, I don't choose to believe. So belief has the great element of doubt. Okay? But if you already know, you don't have to say you believe. For example, you know very well, so and so is my father. So when you introduce your father to somebody else, you will say, this is my father, right? You won't say, I think, I believe he's my father. Well, you will say that because you know very well. So in Buddhism, we use the word refuge because in Buddhism, actually we are encouraged not to simply believe, because to believe means we carry elements of doubt. So we use the word refuge. And for refuge, in the Buddhist scriptures, what do you mean by refuge? Refuge, there are 4 characteristics of refuge. Number 1 is for protection. Okay? For protection. Refuge is like a house. House protect you from rain and shine. So I take refuge means I go to the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha for the protection. Okay? And refuge has a second meaning of to dedicate one's life. Means it is something that you take on as part of your life for a long term. Not something that you like to come, you believe, tomorrow you don't believe, or today you believe, tomorrow you don't believe, or today you take refuge, tomorrow you don't take refuge. No, it is something that we want to dedicate our life. That's the meaning of refuge. And the third one, taking refuge means to learn. Okay. So when we say we take refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, we are saying we want to learn from the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Therefore, it is not just a ceremony, you know, especially in Mahayana Buddhism or Chinese Buddhism, you have people going to temple, take refuge ceremony, and then, but after that, you don't learn. Then in that case, you are not taking the refuge in full. It's just like you registered for the course, diploma in Buddhist and Pali study, but you don't come and attend classes. So you are registered, but you don't learn. So it's still not complete. So when we say take refuge in the Buddha, it's just to learn. Okay. And the next is, it's not only to get protection, but to protect and serve. So when you say you take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, means we also must serve the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. We must also work something to repay our gratitude. It's just like a house that offer you protection, rain and shine. You must also know how to maintain the house, okay, keep the house in order, clean and tidy. So this is the meaning of refuge. Okay. Well, sometimes you have, especially in Chinese Buddhism, you have refuge ceremony, and people all come for refuge. And then after refuge ceremony, you get a new name, Buddhist name. Just for interest, how many of you here have taken a Buddhist refuge ceremony and adopted a Buddhist name? Respond, please. Lee, Peter, you are? You are? How about the rest?
Me too.
How many of you? Huh?
Lisa?
Me too.
Yes.
You too? I can see some of the photograph, not everybody's photograph. Okay. David?
I think everybody has.
Huh?
I'd say good.
Yeah,
Good
I haven't
with-
actually.
Yeah, David has it, but
Yeah, I'm in line.
I'd say about 70% of us have.
Oh, 70%. Okay.
Mr. Hong, you can drag your screen wide and you can see everybody maybe.
Let me see how I can
You
do
can
it.
drag it.
It doesn't matter. If you speak, you will appear. Okay. But I can't see everybody now. Okay. So refuge ceremony. Refuge ceremony. Do you think it's important for a Buddhist to become for a person to become a Buddhist? Do you think it's important to go through a refuge ceremony? I know in Sri Lanka, in Thailand, a lot of people don't have this so-called refuge ceremony because they are born Buddhist. Okay, but for Christians, maybe you go for baptism. But for Buddhists, usually if they are born, the parents will bring them to the temple, and as a baby, there's no special ceremony, but the monks will chant something and probably give them a name, and that's about it. But in Mahayana Buddhism, because in Chinese Buddhism, because a lot of us did not go through the ceremony when we were young. So later on, when we learn Buddhism, we go through the ceremony. A ceremony in which at least 4 monks were present to represent the Sangha, to conduct the ceremony. And after some ceremonial processes, you'll be given a Buddhist name, so to say. So my question is this ceremony so very important? Do you think so?
I personally don't think it's necessary, because if we were to start making accusations that somebody had to become a Buddhist by taking refuge and then and taking that on. And maybe even if they didn't believe it, maybe if they decided to take refuge because they had conviction, it still isn't a prerequisite to become enlightened. So I think if we started saying that it was a requirement for people to have this ceremony, it only would even hold water conceptually, but it wouldn't have anything to do with ultimate reality. So I don't think it would be fair to say that. Then we're no better or different than a monotheistic religion that says you have to get baptized to remove original sin or you burn in hell. You know, it would be not Buddhist to say that it was a requirement, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks. Very good. And anybody else have differing opinions?
I agree mostly with Kyle. Well, for the most, but I don't think needs to be a ceremony to practice Buddhism or to call yourself a Buddhist. That Buddhism is open to everybody, and there's no requirement for a ceremony to go along with it. It assigns a title.
Yeah. Okay. So now we have two persons here who say not necessary to have ceremony, but we have some people who have gone through the ceremony. You have any objection to that?
Oh, don't get me wrong. I've gone through the ceremony. So, but I don't think there was, that's for myself, that was more of a reaffirmation that, and a commitment to Buddhism. But it wasn't necessary for me to start practicing Buddhism or start learning Buddhism. It was, like I said, it was more of an affirmation that I'm going to stick with this and that this is something that has made my life better. And I agree with the teachings. The teachings to me, it makes sense to me. And I seek refuge in the Triple Gem and the 5 precepts because they make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
oh, sorry.
During the time of the Buddha, when the Buddha accepted monks into his monkhood, there was no ceremony. He just simply come, oh, bhikkhus, monks come. That's all, accepted already. So there was no ceremony. But later on, this ceremony comes about. Perhaps like some of you already explained, it's more of to satisfy ourselves. It is a individual and a social comfort to have this ceremony. It's just like if you get married, you can always get married without a ceremony, right? But a lot of people would feel comfortable marrying without a ceremony. So you still have a marriage ceremony. So of course you can get married without a ceremony, but maybe you feel it's not really that adequate. It's just not complete. Okay, especially ladies. Maybe you don't feel comfortable that you got married, but no ceremony. When you were younger, you were imagining that when you grow up, you want to put on your wedding gown and things like that. So you want to have some kind of ceremony to complete it. So it is more of a social requirement. Okay? But just by the way, many Buddhists, especially in Asia, mistaken that when you go for the ceremony to become a Buddhist, you go for that particular master who officiate the ceremony, which is actually not correct. Because when we take refuge, we are taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, not that particular master. That particular master represents the Sangha, or with his group of people, represent the Sangha to officiate the ceremony, but not to become your refuge. Okay? So if you go for one refuge ceremony, I think that's good enough. But if you want to go for more and more refuge ceremony and more Buddhist names, just imagine if you were to pass away and you go to the Pure Land or whatever land and you have so many names, I think there will be confusion there. So anyway, I don't object to people going for many ceremonies to become Buddhist, but my advice is just stick to one name is good enough already. The first name given by the first ceremony, that's good enough. You can go and join many other ceremonies for the sake of satisfying yourself. But there's no need to have so many names. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that if we go through many ceremonies with a lot of different refugee names, and then if one day we do make it to some kind of pure land, and it will be so confusion, does that mean the names that we will get from the ceremony that will be carried through to that pure land?
I'm just joking. Okay. I'm just joking. I think there should be no confusion. You can carry many passports. Some of you carry USA passport, Italy passport, UK passport. You still can come to Malaysia, no problems. You just show one of your passports, you're okay. I'm just joking, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Now, when we talk about Buddha, talking about the Buddha taking refuge, the next thing we have to talk about is the worship of the Buddha image. Because you say Buddhism is a humanistic Buddhism. And yet you put an image made of clay or made of porcelain or picture, have a Buddha image, and then you offer light, offer oil lamp, flower, and so on and so forth. Isn't it a form of worship of the Buddha image? Now, before proceeding this further, I would like to explain the importance of symbol. Because in all religions, they have symbols. The Christians have a cross, it's a symbol. Okay? The Muslims have a crescent, it's a symbol. The Buddha has a Buddha in the Buddhism, we have the Buddha image as a symbol. So all religions have certain symbols. Even countries have symbols. You have your national flag, is your symbol. And symbols are important. If you don't believe symbols are important, now you dig into your pocket. You may have some USA notes there with George Washington's face there, and it's written there, 10 US dollar. Okay. When it's written there 10 US dollar, it symbolizes 10 US dollars, and you value it as 10 US dollars. Okay. Would you say it is just a piece of paper and you just throw it away? You wouldn't, isn't it? Because that paper symbolizes 10 US dollars. So that is the importance of symbols. And some people fight over symbols because let's say you trample on my national flag, I would do the same to you. Okay? Or you discredit my symbol, I would do the same to you. So this is how symbols become very important in the social context. Okay? So from the Buddhists, from the early days, there was no Buddha image, but the Buddha image appeared about 600 years after the Buddha passed away. During the time of the Buddha, it was said that when people came to see the Buddha and they couldn't find the Buddha and they were very disappointed. So a Bodhi tree was planted to let people come and say, okay, if the Buddha is not here, but the Bodhi tree can represent the Buddha, you can look around the Bodhi tree and then you can go back. But for that matter, for 500 to 600 years, there were no Buddha images. So Buddhists, for 500 to 600 years, practiced Buddhism without images. But images came about after the Greek king Alexander the Great came to India. Alexander the Great conquered Persia, Afghanistan, right to northern India. And when he did that, he brought along a lot of Greek skilled artists. And these Greek artists like to make images. So they began to make images. Before that, the Greek artists were making images of Apollo. They were making images of Alexandra. And when they came to India, in the place today we call the Gandhara area, they make Buddha images. And later on, Buddha images became more and more common. So today we use the Buddha images as a symbol. Okay. Now, if you look at the Buddha images, then we come to realize that Buddhists can practice Buddhism with or without image. We use the image to let us focus and identify ourselves. For example, if you take photo of your children and you look at your children, it's much better than you don't have picture of your children. So same thing, we make the Buddha images. Now, one question I want to ask is, when the Greek artists came to the northern India and started making Buddha images, there were no photographs to show how the Buddha looked like. Right? There was no photograph. There were no drawings to show. It was about the beginning of the century, 2000 years ago. No photograph to show, no pictures, nothing. How would they know how the Buddha looked like and make the Buddha image? Any one of you here would like to venture for an answer? How the artists come to know how the Buddha looks like?
Well, some of the sutras, they describe his appearance in great detail. They talk about his bronze skin and how nice his teeth were and his hair and his face and his smile and his eyes and how they were set. And so I would imagine they could get almost everything they needed from just reading certain sutras.
Yeah, great. That's the correct answer. Actually, there was no picture to show, but there were scriptures to tell roughly or to describe how the Buddha looks like. It is said that the Buddha has got 32 major characteristics, 80 minor characteristics, major characteristics. For example, he has got a heart on his head, symbolizing wisdom. Okay? He has got a spiral of hair here, you know. I was told this hair, when you pull it out, it's more than 2 feet, the length of your hand. When you let it go, it will spring back. Of course, later sculptures, sometimes they put a dot here. Sometimes instead of putting a dot, they put a diamond here. And after some time, people thought the Buddha has got a third eye. Goodness gracious, if the Buddha got a third eye, I think if you see him, you will run away, right? So that's how the features were incorporated. It was said that when the Buddha's hand opened, there were wax here, like the ducks. Okay, some of the characteristics. And if he stretched his hand down, his hands would go beyond the knee. Okay? That's why you see Buddha images in Asia. Usually the top portion of the body is very much bigger than the lower portion. So at first we don't understand. How come they make the image look like, like that? But if you follow the description, it was correct. Okay. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you is that actually all these are very wishful thinking. Because what the scripture says about the 32 characteristics and 80 minor characteristics may not be with the Buddha. Because there were many other occasions when people did not recognize the Buddha. They did not recognize him as somebody with extraordinary features. Okay? All these characteristics were actually mentioned long ago, even before the advent of the Buddha. People talk about all these special characteristics. And when the time comes to make the images, they would incorporate all these characteristics inside. But if you trace back the origin of the images, then you begin to know why. This is the Buddha image of the Gandhara culture. The Greek make it. Do you realize that he looks more Western than Indian? think he looks more Western than Indian because it was made by the Greek anyway. All right. And who is this? Who can venture and answer for me? The second photograph. Who is this guy? Do they look the same? Do they look really the same?
No, they don't look the same.
Huh?
They don't
don't
look
look
the
the same?
same.
They do look the same, right? The second fella is actually Alexander the Great. This is Alexander the Great. When they make Alexander the Great, so actually when they make the Buddha image, not having a photograph or a picture, they tend to make the Buddha look a little bit like Alexander the Great, you know. And you look at this one. Who is this guy? This guy and this guy, they look more or less identical, right? This is Apollo, the Greek god. Okay, imagination. People make Apollo look like that. And when you make Alexander the Great, you make him look like Apollo. Okay, even though Alexander can be actually not so good looking, but they make him good looking. Okay. So that is how the images transform. And in fact, today, if you go to China, the images don't look like this. They all look like Chinese, okay? And if you go to Japan, they look like Japanese. If you go to Thailand, maybe they look like Thai, okay? So these are images. What I want to say here is the founder, despite the images that we make, we can actually practice Buddhism with or without the Buddha images. Fundamentally, the founder, it is still a human being who has achieved the highest attainment, and we declare him the Buddha. Shall we take a break now? And then we continue after 10 minutes or 15 minutes? Agree?
Yes, yes,
Have
agree.
a coffee break or whatever. Okay?
All right.
Okay.
15 minutes. Be back 5 after.
Okay. Hello. Welcome back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can hear. All right. Okay, we shall continue now. Just now, we talked about the founder of Buddhism, the Buddha, to drive home the point that the Buddha was born an ordinary human being, and after gaining enlightenment, he became the Buddha. And the Buddha did not claim to be an agent of God or son of God or messenger of God or anything like that, but just as a human being who has strived to achieve the highest attainment possible. And later period, we Buddhists worship the Buddha image. We use the word worship, not so much in the form of worship, but as a way of paying respect to the Buddha, as a teacher who showed the way. Okay, so this is the point we want to drive home, that the Buddha was human and humane in many ways. Okay. The next point that now I'm going to continue is the system of thought. You know, if you look at religions, actually there is a system of thought in all the teachings that are presented to us. When we talk about system, for example, if we look at a car is a system. So in that system, you have the engine. The engine is connected to the gearbox to the drive shaft to the axle to the wheel, and then therefore the engine can run the wheel and the car can move. So it's a system. So we can also understand the system of thought in Buddhism to know whether it is humanistic or it is theistic. If you look at the theistic system of thought, is the system is like this. First, God, how he appeared, we don't know. He just started with God first. That is the first component in the system, God. The second component is the human beings. But from the first component, God, to the second component, human beings, there is a creation. Okay? So God created human beings. And then, after created human beings disobey God, we call it sin. Yes, the human beings sin. Then we brought in the third component, redemption. Since you sin, you must have some way to redeem yourself. And from the redemption, if you properly follow God's wishes, then you can go back to God. Okay? Failing, then He may place you in the heaven. Failing which, if you fail, then maybe you'll be placed in the hell eternally. Okay? So it's a system of thought. The system of thought is like that. God created human beings. Human beings sin. After human beings sin, God had a plan for you to redeem yourself. If you redeem yourself well, you can be placed in heaven. Or if you don't redeem yourself well, you may be placed in hell. So that's the system of thought. So that system of thought is centered around God. It's theistic. But Buddhism is not theistic. Buddhism is not theistic, but rather Buddhism is humanistic. Why we say Buddhism is humanistic? Because Buddhism, the Buddha taught by the Dhamma taught by the Buddha, focus on how to solve our human problems. We do not begin with the God. We begin with right now, this human being, what is his problem? So we begin with right here, right now, this human being, what is his problem? And we say his problem, we use the word dukkha. Dukkha. Okay? The great Buddhist scholar, Dr. Wapula Rahula of Sri Lanka, translated this word dukkha into unsatisfactoriness. Meaning to say, this life on earth here is unsatisfactory. If I'm not mistaken, Thanissaro Bhikkhus translated this word into stress, making me more stressed. Because we are so used to the word dukkha that nowadays we have many new translations come out. At one time, Rahula, way back in the 1950 or 60, when he translated it as unsatisfactoriness. And then the Thanissaro Bhikkhu now translated it as stress. Well, we begin with our human life is not satisfactory. Then the Buddha showed the way. What is the cause? What is the cause of this? So this is after showing the cause, then the Buddha showed that there is a way out. There's a way out. Then after showing there's a way out, the Buddha showed how the way to be done. So it is basically four major components: dukkha, samudaya, nirodha, magga. Dukkha or unsatisfactoriness. Samudaya, the cause of the unsatisfactoriness. Nirodha, the cessation of the unsatisfactoriness. Magga, the way to the cessation of unsatisfactoriness. And if you look at this, the four items here, which we call the Four Noble Truths, it has got nothing to do with God. There is no role for God. It is all about ourselves. So you can see in this system of thought, it is very, very humanistic. It's about our human problems. Okay? So if you look at the system of thought now, is to solve our universal human problem, our universal problem of dukkha or unsatisfactoriness. By the way, I think all religions admitted that life in this earth is unsatisfactory. Except that Buddhism tried to solve this problem. Whereas all the other religions accepted that life in this earth is unsatisfactory, and they offer a solution called heaven. Heaven is better. If life here on earth is satisfactory, why we bother about heaven? So if you talk about system of thought, I think all great religious systems agree that our life on earth here is not satisfactory. But not satisfactory actually is good to some extent. It means that we have a way to strive for satisfactoriness. Okay? And the human problem that the Buddha proposed to solve, dukkha, samudaya, nirodha, magga, or unsatisfactoriness, cause of unsatisfactoriness, cessation of unsatisfactoriness, and the way to the cessation of unsatisfactoriness is universal, is applicable to all human beings on earth, anywhere on earth. Therefore, it is not a problem of one particular race or religion. Therefore, the Dhamma is not for one particular race or a particular nation, and it has nothing to do with the problem created by God. It's our problem. So if you look at the Buddhist system of thoughts, there is no role for God. It is all about human efforts to overcome our problems or our unsatisfactoriness. We must walk the path, the Eightfold Noble Path, the Magga. And that you have to do it yourself. That's why we call it, Buddhism is a do-it-yourself religion, DIY religion. In this do-it-yourself, there is no need for prayer. Okay? It's all about our self-reliance, not dependent on any third party for our salvation. Okay? And in this system of thought, we actually bring out the Buddhist concept of self-determinism against God-determinism. Self-determinism is your life here, good or bad, satisfactory or unsatisfactory, is determined by yourself. We say we are the results of what we were, and we will be the result of what we are now. So we determine ourselves. We do not say everything is due to God. Okay. Everything is due to God or God determinism is foreign to in Buddhism. Because in God determinism, or everything is determined by God, the Buddha actually refuted this. The Buddha said, if everything is predetermined by God, then if you kill, you steal, you commit adultery, you consume intoxicants, or you tell lies, you are not responsible because it's predetermined by God. Okay? So the Buddha refuted this. There's nothing to be predetermined by God. It's you determine yourself. Okay? So recently I have a friend who told me this story, that he helped someone when he was in big trouble in an accident. He helped that someone and sent him to a hospital, and that fellow was recovered in the hospital. After recovered from the hospital, recovered from his sickness in the hospital, that patient told my friend, "Thank God, I am safe." Then my friend told him, "What? Thank God? I'm the one who saved you, not God." Then he said, "Oh, okay. God saved me through you." Then my friend said, "Why should God take credit? I am the one who is doing the job saving you. Imagine if you were to die, would you say thank me? If you were to die, then you will say it's me. Not God take your life. I am the one who didn't save you and you died." So this is the concept of God determinism, which actually Buddhism totally disagree. And in fact, the Buddha did mention that there are three things which is against his teachings, which is he did not teach, he said. For example, one of them is God determinism. The other one is things happen by chance. Randomly, it can happen anyway. So if it has to happen, it has to happen. So that is called random. The Buddha refuted this. And the third one, the Buddha says, everything is due to our past karma. That is also wrong. If everything is due to your past karma, then today you go and kill and steal and you do all the bad things, break all the 5 precepts. You say, well, it is because of my past karma, I have to do all these things. So the Buddha says, it's again wrong. Huh? You must understand, karma is always there all the time. So your past karma might have brought you to this present situation, but what you are going to do is your present karma. Okay? Now, if you look at another things, if you look at today's human achievements, they are all by human efforts. Today, you are in front of a computer, you are using Zoom. You think Zoom was created by God? I don't think so. You are enjoying the electricity, the modern comforts. All this took several hundred years after the scientific revolution to come to what we are today. And you look at all the scientists, can you say they were assigned by God to do all these things, or they were by their own effort? I think it was more by their own efforts, because in the first place, they were prosecuted by the church for their scientific discoveries. For example, Galileo Galilei, they were prosecuted for religious reasons. But we have come to this today, okay, for even fighting COVID-19. You think it is, we are able to fight the COVID-19? Who is fighting the COVID-19? The healthcare takers on the front lines. Human efforts, all are human efforts. Okay? So from this system of thought, we notice that the Buddha says, don't blame the God, don't be not determined by God, yourself, your own self. Now we look at the next thing. In the system of thought, we have the teaching. Okay? The teaching, or what we call the Dhamma. The Dhamma is universal law in this world, the universal law. The Buddha taught us the Dhamma. And the Dhamma is based on what he observed, what he understand through his enlightenment. And then he taught us his teachings. There is no authority and no authority involved. When the Buddha preached his teachings, he said it's his teachings, not I'm a messenger here to send you this teaching. Okay? So when we look at the Buddha's teachings, there are 9 characteristics or 6 characteristics that you will often chant when we perform the service in a temple about the virtues of the Dhamma, the Dhamma or the teachings of the Buddha that was preached. The Buddha, we say, Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo. Are you all familiar with this chanting? The virtues of the Buddha, Dhamma Sangha. Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho. Are you all familiar with this? For example, then we come to the Dhamma is Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehi Pasiko Panaiko Pachatam Veritabu Vinyuhiti. Are you all familiar with this? Well, this is taught. These are called characteristics of the Dhamma. First one is called well preached. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo. Well preached the Dhamma by the Buddha. Okay. Sanditiko. Sanditiko means it is visible in this world. We can reap the fruit in this very world. Okay? We don't have to wait until we die to go to heaven. Well, a lot of us think that heaven is a better place, but actually none of us prepare to die now. Okay? Some of us prepare to die. We always say heaven is a better place, but nobody likes to go to heaven when they are healthy on this earth here. They still like this earth. Okay, but the Buddha's teachings is something that you can realize invisible in this world, santitiko. For example, if you practice dana, the happiness arises in you. You can realize it that straight away. By practicing dana, you would realize that there's a happiness arising in you. Okay? By practicing sila or observe the precepts, you realize that you have a more peaceful mind because you don't break all the rules and regulations, all the bad things. You didn't do all the bad things. You feel more at ease with yourself. So these are results that you can realize straight away. And if you practice meditation, some degree of calmness, some wisdom may arise. So this is sanditiko. Akaliko, immediate. Kala means time. Akaliko means no time. This time means this time. It means it's immediate. You don't have to wait until the next slide. Okay. Ehi pasiko invites everybody to come and see, not to believe but to see. So this is the essence of the Dhamma. You are asked not to come here just to believe. The Buddha did not say, believe in what I say. The Buddha said, test my teaching like testing gold in fire. See, the Buddha has that confidence. Test my teaching like testing gold in fire. So the Buddha Dhamma invites us to Hehi pasiko. Pasiko means see. Hehi come and see. Okay, come and see. So from this, you can see that from the Buddha's teaching, from the Dhamma, it is a very rational teaching. Rational and reasons ask us to come and see, not ask us to come and believe. Then, opanayiko, leading to the goal. Here it says, actually you can lead to the goal of Nibbana. That means, if you practice the Buddha's teaching, the Dhamma, you would be able to achieve your goal of happiness. So, it is something that we can achieve right here on earth. Pachattang veritabu vinyuhiti. It is to be understood individually by the wise one. Here it's talking about person. Okay, so you cannot do it for somebody else. You cannot eat for somebody else. You cannot learn for somebody else. You have to do it yourself. You cannot practice for somebody else. It is to be yourself, individually by yourself. So the wise person, by himself, to be able to understand the Dhamma. So this is in terms of the characteristics of the Buddha's teachings. There is nothing theistic here. This is all humanistic. It's about rational argument. It's about reasons. And this, for those who practice Buddhism by following the path of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, you practice the precepts, you practice the concentration of the mind and the realization of wisdom, you will be able to realize all these benefits without having to resort to God. Okay, next. On what basis we say Buddhism is humanistic or the Dhamma is humanistic? Number one, the basis is cause and effect. We do not say it's predetermined by God. It is by chance, but it is all because of certain cause and effect. Again, this is very humanistic. We don't put our blame on any third parties. We ourselves play a predominant role. But on this aspect, well, sometimes you may say, but the problem was not caused by me. The problem was caused by somebody else. So some of you may say, I'm doubtful about this cause and effect. But if you understand cause and effect in terms of the conditions, then I think perhaps you can get this matter better. Now, if you say smoke cigarette is no good, I think it's generally accepted by everybody. Smoking cigarette is not good for our health. Medical professionals and advisors against smoking. Then sometimes you observe some people, they smoke, but they live until 80 and 90, no problem. Then we say, no, it's not true. And some people say, well, until 80 and 90, the fellow was smoking, no problem. When he stopped smoking, he died. So we became very doubtful whether it is true or not. But you see, if you understand in terms of conditions, if you smoke, these are the conditions that can lead to bad health. Okay? So the cause is there, the effect is there. But it does not mean that the effect will definitely happen that way. Because this person may be born with a very strong genes, healthy body. So despite all the alcoholic drinks and all the tobacco and cigarette that gone into his body, he still can live longer than other people. Because he has got many other conditions. Because cause is not one. There are many causes. Many causes. Okay. So you say for a plant to grow, we need water, you need sunshine, we need fertilizers. Well, if the combination is not right, the plant will still wither. Well, there are plenty of, you must put enough fertilizer, you have enough sunlight. If all the conditions are fully well endowed, then most probably you get that effect. Okay? So back to our human life, it is also like that. And what happened is usually our reaction to all the things happening around ourselves. I give an example so that we can understand the importance of cause and effect in Buddhism and how we react to this. One morning in a family, the father and the mother, or the mother prepared everything ready for the child to go to school. So she prepared all the dishes and with a cup of orange juice. Then the father came to the dining table and the child was at the dining table, and the father in a hurry accidentally pushed the orange juice, and the orange juice fell on the floor, the glass fell on the floor, broke, and hell broke loose. Then the husband would scold the wife, why you are such a stupid woman, you put this glass on the edge of the table? And the wife would yell back at him, you stupid man, early in the morning I prepare all these things and here you are scolding me. And then the child got frightened when the parents quarrel. So finally the child cried, and then the father had to sew the baby down, and after some struggle managed to calm down the baby and carry her to the car and rush her to the school. And because of his angry mode, he met with an accident. So, if you look at the situation, this story, where is the cause and effect? You say everything is due to cause and effect, but where is the cause and effect? Now, if you look at the things, the glass that was pushed over and break, that is something that has happened. But our reaction to that scenario is the cause. And if that cause is got incorrect, the sequence follows. Accidentally pushing the glass over and started scolding. You started scolding, that is the cause. And because of that cause, the effect is you get a scolding from your wife. And because of that scolding, that scolding between the husband and wife become the cause for the child. So the child will cry and things like that. So it created a big mess. So that is how the cause and the effect took place, and we get into the mess. Now, suppose on the other hand, the man gently, he accidentally pushed the glass over, and the glass fell. The man quickly apologized and mop the place, clean up the place, console the wife. I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful. And the wife's reaction would be, never mind, I will make you another car. Just be much more careful. So you see, the same situation, the same scenario, but if because our mind reacted differently, the result is different. So that's why we say it is everything cause and effect. And this has been built into the Buddhist philosophy, and this becomes the basis of humanistic aspect of Buddhism, cause and effect. Okay. Now, in the Buddhist, in the Dhamma, we believe in this cause and effect with one more assumption is that human being is supreme. We believe that human beings has got a human dignity. Because human being is supposed to be the what you call the intelligent beings endowed with at least 3 qualities, which you don't find in other human beings. What are the 3 qualities? Human being is supreme because number one, the mind. You know, human beings, we call in the olden days, we say man. Woman folk, please forgive me if I don't say woman. Well, in the early days, when we say man, means include woman. This word man in the Sanskrit is manusa. I mentioned to you just now, manusa. From the word manu. Manu means mind. So manusa or man means beings with a mind. Beings with a mind. And beings with a mind, this mind, for human beings, we are endowed with one advantage over all the other beings. Number one is that is we are able to remember things very well. Therefore, because we are able to accumulate knowledge. Other beings also can remember things, but not so much. You see, a bird knows how to return back to its nest. That means the bird remember the nest. Okay. A dog know how to go back to his master's home. The dog remembers remember the house. So they can remember. We also can. Human beings can remember, but we can remember many things. Many more things than other beings. And because of this memory, we are able to accumulate knowledge and wisdom. And number 2, human beings can practice morality. Morality. We are able to control ourselves and regulate ourselves. Sometimes you see animals, we are different from them because animals don't control themselves. So, example, if you see a herd of say dogs, well, they would have sex among themselves as and when they like. Seen or unseen by people, they will just do it because they don't control themselves. They don't regulate themselves. Whereas human beings can control ourselves. So we establish the system of marriage. We establish the system of morality. So this is one more advantage of human beings over the rest. And the third one is will. Human beings can do wonderful things. Animals would avoid dangers. Unless compelled, they won't go into the dangers. If there's a fire, You chase a dog to go over the fire, the dog won't go through unless through a trainer you force him or you entice him with some reward once you over the fire and things like that. But human beings are different. Human beings can do things that we would like to do, no matter how difficult. Later you see people like Shen Zhuang, people like Yi Jing, they travel all the way from China to India for months, years, because they have that strong will to do what they wanted to do. So today it's the same thing. You have a strong will, you want to learn the Dhamma, you spend hours sitting in front of the computer, listening to this man mumbling away. You have a strong will. But no dogs and cats like to sit in front of the TV of the camera and look at me. There's a difference. Okay. Now, on these two bases, we can understand that the Buddha accorded us human beings a very high status. We have the human dignity, and not only that, we can become the Buddha. In all other religions, you cannot become God. Well, God created you. At the best, you come back. You are still a creature. You cannot become God. Whereas in Buddhism, you can become a Buddha. Okay, so that is a big difference here. And the basis is the benefit we are talking about is always this person, this time. So it's talking about human beings now. This person, this time. Not wait until we die. Okay. Therefore, here we can understand on the basis of this, the human-centric and not theistic. Now, the next thing I want to share with you is on daily living. Because we can say, you know, the Buddha taught this, the Buddha taught that. But how does it translate into our daily life? Are we following this in our daily life, daily living? Now, if you scrutinize what the Buddha taught, then you will come to understand that the emphasis on the daily life is always on the cultivation of the mind, the body, and the speech. It's about ourself. Our daily living is about the mind, the body, and our speech. And these must be cultivated, trained, developed, as against rituals and prayers. We are not ruling out rituals and prayers. All religions have rituals and prayers. But the Buddha makes it very clear that the importance actually is on the cultivation of the mind, body, and speech. If you look at the life of the monks, the Buddha and the monks, they are daily living, they go out, they beg for the food, they come back, they cleanse themselves, they add the food, then they will listen to the Dhamma, learn or preach the Dhamma or listen to the Dhamma, they meditated. But you don't find in the scripture say that they did some prayers or rituals or something like that. Don't have. But of course, today when we have made Buddhism a religion, there are some kind of, we call it prayers or rituals to satisfy our own needs. But the emphasis must still be on mind, body, and speech cultivation and development. Okay, and this we can see later as it reflected in many of the Buddhist suttas, and it covers every aspect of our life, from individual to family, to society, to economics, to politics. It is true that the Buddha spent most of his time with the monks, and therefore he talked a lot about training of the mind. But he also did not rule out our roles to the society, to our occupations, and even to the running of the state or to politics. The Buddha also, in fact, the Buddha always went to the palaces to preach to the kings. So he actually associated with politicians. Kings are politicians, of those days. So the Buddha actually covers every aspect of our life. But of course, if you scrutinize the Buddhist scriptures, the vast part of the Buddhist scriptures is on the cultivation of particular individuals. But we are not ruling out that Buddhism also covers other aspects of our life. And from here, in present days, we have moved on from this daily living to cover to humanistic to socially engaged Buddhism, to humanistic Buddhism, which I will talk about it later, how it becomes a movement in China. And then from humanistic Buddhism also evolved what we call socially engaged Buddhism. Socially engaged Buddhism, I think it is quite popular in the USA now. Although the characteristics today is very much different from, say, in the 1960s, 70s. Okay? So we can see that the Buddha's teachings covers every aspect of our daily life, and there's no, the stress is not on rituals and prayers. The Buddha did not specify that we must pray how many times a day. We must do offering of flowers and jars and sticks and whatnot. All these we do it ourselves. Okay, on daily living, there are, as I mentioned to you just now, the vast majority of the Buddhist sutras talk about cultivation of the mind, cultivation of the body and speech, preach to the individuals, especially to the monks. But there are also many other suttas, many other teachings, which cover lay people's life, especially the vast majority of us here are lay people. And I can share with you two simple Buddhist suttas that can help us to understand the emphasis placed by Buddha on our daily living. Okay. Okay. One of them is called the Sigalovada Sutta. Before proceeding, I would like to ask, have you heard about this sutta? You have learned about this sutta?
I have not. I can't speak for everybody.
Oh, and who else haven't heard about this sutta?
I have.
Because I thought you have done the diploma in Buddhist study, probably you have covered this sutta. Have you done? Jeff Matthews, have you done this?
I haven't heard of it.
You heard of it?
No, sorry, Jeff. I'll let you talk.
Oh,
okay.
Is this the one? Is this the one where there's a guy worshiping the 6 directions, and Buddha comes upon him, and I don't remember what the Buddha says to the guy, but he gives him some direction as far as, instead of worshiping 6 directions, you should redirect your efforts in a different way.
Okay, I think some of you have not heard about this, so I will elaborate a little bit here. Because I assume if all of you already heard this, and if I were to present it again, it would be too boring to all of you. So since some of you have not heard it, I will present this. Because from these suttas, we can see that the Buddha stressed on our daily living. Now, the story goes like this. Long ago, there was a Brahmin. You know, Brahmin means the highest class in India, in India at that time, the priest class. And he has a son by the name of Sikala, and hence the name of the sutta, Sigalovada Sutta. This Brahmin, he advised his son to worship 6 directions every day. Why worship the 6 directions every day? He did not say. He did not tell him. So after he died, this young Sigala, every morning, 4 a.m., he would wake up, wash himself, with all his hair wet. The scripture says with all his hair wet. Probably those days there's no hair dryer, and with white robes, and he would pray to 6 directions. The 6 directions: north, east, south, west, the zenith up, and the nadir down. So he was praying in all 6 directions. Then one morning, the Buddha was surveying with the world with his divine eyes, and he saw Sikalava doing this prayer to 6 directions. So the Buddha came to the Sikalava and asked him, "Why are you praying to the 6 directions?" Sikalava said, "I don't know. My father asked me to do this, so I do this." Then the Buddha advised him, when you pray to the 6 directions, in every direction actually represents something. And instead of praying to that direction, you must do what is required of that direction represents. Now here you can see how the Buddha did not ridicule Sikalava, saying that, "You stupid, foolish man, why are you worshipping the 6 directions without understanding?" There's no need to worship the 6 directions, but instead the Buddha very wisely repackaged the whole thing for him. The Buddha says, now when you do the 6 directions, you must remember each direction represents something. When you pray to the east, the sun rising east, that is where your parents represent your parents. So it is a relationship between parents and children. So as a child, the Buddha prescribed 5 things you must do to your parents. Okay, you serve them when they are old. You support them when they are old. You do their household work, and when they die, you inherited their properties. You make sure you take good care of their properties, make their properties grow instead of shrink, and things like that. So the Buddha advised. So you see, the Buddha is not every day talking about jhana, or enlightenment, but he knows different people, different levels. So to this young Sikalava, he said, you must take care of your parents and children. If children, you must give them education, train them in the skill, etc., etc. Okay, and when they grow old, to arrange for their marriage. Okay, those days in India, you must arrange for their marriage. Of course, nowadays youngsters don't like to be arranged, but actually, arranged marriage still has a lot of advantages because nowadays without arrangement, a lot of people cannot find their right couple, their right partner. So anyway, the Buddha talked about family relationship of parents and children. Then from the east to the west. To the west, the Buddha says the west represents the relationship between husband and wife. Now here, the Buddha advised husband, again, you must do certain things to your wife. Okay, you must give some. You must be filial to your wife, to be what you call the trustworthy husband, not to commit adulteries, take care of the wife. The Buddha even mentioned to be gentle with your wife. And lastly, the Buddha, he understood the mentality of woman. So the Buddha said, you must give ornaments and presents, jewelries to your wife from time to time. See, the Buddha understood the sentiments of women, And on the other hand, the women must know how to take care of the household work and things like that. So I gave you these 2 examples. Then north is the friends and companion, how you treat your friends, how to look after your friends and things like that. This is about social interaction with others. On the south is about teachers and pupils. This is about how you should react, how you should conduct yourself. The relationship between teachers and pupils. And then up zenith is about religious teachers. So the relationship between us and our religious teachers or anybody else who is higher in us. Then the nadir is about how we should take care of our subordinates, our servants. So you see in these suttas, it's all completely about social life of a lay person, covering family life, friendship, students, teachers, masters, and things like that. So from here you can see, again, the Buddha is talking about human relationship, nothing about God, not theistic at all. It is all about human. Okay. So this is one sutta. So the next sutta, but perhaps we should take a break now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Take a break now.
Sure.
Okay, we should take a break now. Another 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hear me? Hear me? Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So we continue here from here. This morning, for the first 1 hour, I talk about the founder of Buddhism, the Buddha, to stress home the point that the Buddha was a supreme human being, not an agent of God, who showed us the way. He's a teacher and not a surveyor. Then the second hour, what did we recover during the second hour? Maybe some of you should help me to remember what have we what have we discussed during the second hour. Yes. I need some response, please. What did we discuss during the second hour?
We discussed the system of thought in Buddhism.
Correct, that's one. Okay. Okay, who wants to continue after the system of thought? What do I talk?
How Buddhism is human-centered and not theistic-centered.
I talk about the teachings. Okay. I talk about the system of thought, then I talk about the teachings. What
And
else?
then the basis.
The basis,
The basis, yes. On what basis?
cause and effect.
Basis of cause and effect, the basis of the
Human is supreme.
human supremacy. Okay. Then after that, the last part, I talk about daily living, right?
Yes.
How it related to our daily life. And on daily life, I mentioned to you that I will talk about two suttas. One is the Sikalvada Sutta, which I shared with you just now. And then the next sutta that I would like to discuss with you is the Mangala Sutta. Okay. Again, to illustrate or to drive home the point that it's about human life. Okay. Our daily living. Okay. How many of you have heard this sutta before? Or rather, who have not heard? If you have not heard, put up your hands.
I think the majority of us have
Majority have not heard.
have heard.
Or have heard it.
Yes.
You have covered this sutta, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, okay, I'll briefly go through these suttas to drive home the point about the Buddha's advice on our daily living. Now, this sutta, usually I will take about 5 hours to talk about this sutta. But today, our main concern is not to talk about this sutta, but to show from this sutta that how this is related to our human life. In the Mangala Sutta, there are 38 blessings. 38 blessings broken down into 10 verses. And the 10 verses, now I will go through one by 10 verses in the fastest possible way, the 10 verses. First one is not to associate with the fools, but to associate with the wise and honor those who are worthy of honor. Asevana cha balanam, panditana cha sevanam, puje cha pujeniyantang etang mangalamuttama. The original verses. Now, from this verse, you see, it talks about relationship with human beings. It's very interesting because in social living, human beings living in society, one of the most important things is to maintain good human relationship. If you can learn from the wise and not to associate with the fools, then you know how to respect or honor those who are worthy of honor, then you establish good human relationship. That becomes the foundation of a healthy living being in a society. Then the next one is Bhakti Rupa Desa Vasocha Pupecha Kata Punyanta Atta Sama Painicha Etang Mangalamuttama. In English, residing in a suitable locality, done merits in the past, and set oneself in the right course. Now here, after talking about human relationship, the next thing is talk about your present situation, your past situation, and your future. It's about time. In your past, if you have done good meritorious deeds in the past, then it's a kind of blessings. Then if you are now, at the present moment, you are residing in a suitable locality. By suitable locality, it does not mean that you live in a very posh area or things like that. It simply means that you live in an area where you can get into contact with the Dhamma, where you have a chance to study the Dhamma. Okay? And of course, some people will say the Chinese believe in feng shui, feng shui. Well, Buddhism does not talk so much about feng shui, but Buddhism believes that living in the right environment also is very important because we are influenced by our environment. And then, of course, for the future, to set ourselves in the right course, right resolve. Okay. Next one. Bahu sachancha sipancha vinayocha susikito subhashitacha yavacha etang mangalamuttama. Here it talks about Bahu sachancha. Bahu means a lot. Sacha means truth, means to learn a lot. So you see, Buddhism does not say that you only learn the Dhamma. You need to have vast learning. So we learn a lot of things, especially in the modern education now. We learn philosophy, we learn arts, we learn science and things like that. And this is encouraged by the Buddha. Then Sachancha, Sipancha, perfect skill. Talking about having a skill. Having a skill to live in this world, Those days in the ancient time, they talk about the carpentry, about animal husbandry and things like that. But today we talk about many other skills, your IT skills, your communication skills, and things like that. And this is all about human life, okay? And then Vinayo talking about having discipline in our life, okay? And then Subhashta Yawacha, kind speech. You see, a lot of problems in this world happen because of speech. We sometimes, because of wrong speech, we created a lot of problems. And sometimes communication is such, if we don't know how to communicate, we cannot solve our problems. I give you an example in Malaysia. We had a communist problem, communist insurgency, we say. And in the 1955, then the chief minister had a peace talk with the communists. And the chief minister wanted the communists to surrender. So he used the term surrender. The communists cannot accept the term surrender. So the peace talk failed. So it was only until 1980 something, 87, I think. So many years later, they came back to the peace talk again. This time, both sides become clever. So we don't use the word surrender, we use the word lay down arms. So the government side, okay, agree, use the term lay down arms. The communist side say, okay, we also agree to use the term lay down arms. So finally, peace treaty was signed by both parties. So you see communication, sometimes communications can create problems. If we know how to communicate properly, sometimes things can be settled properly. Now, the first three is about the individuals. Your own self, you must have good human relationships, circumstances, and I mean the good environment to live in, the right mental attitude, the skills and discipline. So Mangala Sutta, first three verses talk about this. But the next verse talk about your household life and occupation. Matta pitu upatanang putta darasa sanghaho anakulacha kamanta etang mangala muttama. It talk about support of parents, okay, and the care of the children and righteous occupation. So as a Buddhist, especially today Buddhist, please remember you have family obligations to carry out. So while you study the Dhamma, don't neglect these duties. You still have an occupation to do. Not everybody can become monks or nuns. So if you are a lay person, make sure you have a righteous occupation so that you can support your parents and look after your children. Then from household life, we extended further to social life. Okay? Dana chodama chariya cha, okay, nyantakanan cha sangha ho anavajani kamani. Social service. Okay? So you see, the Buddha talk about the first three verses talk about individual, but then after that talk about household life, after that talk about social life, social service. We need to perform charity or dana, and then to take care of relatives. You know, in the Indian society in those days, when you talk about relatives, they talk about from you upward 7 generations and from you downward 7 generations. It's as good as the whole society. It means the whole society, you have to have a social responsibility to everybody. So that's why I put that as social service. By the way, the blue ink, those are my own summary, so that we can remember the Mangala Sutta and can comprehend the essence of the Mangala Sutta properly. Then after that, is moving from just now individual life, social life. Now it's moving a little bit more now back to your own spiritual life. Just now material life, now spiritual life. You talk about arati virati pakpa machapana cha samyamo apamano dhammesu etang mangala muttama. means to lose and abstain from all the evils, abstain from intoxicants, and stead fast in virtues. Here you want to lay the foundation for moral development. Now, just by the way, you know why Buddhists encourage to or advise to abstain from intoxicants is actually you cannot meditate well if you take intoxicants, because our mind is intoxicated in some way. How could you meditate well? Okay. Then, now spiritual life, you must begin with listening to the Dhamma. That's why I put here, listen to the Dhamma. The verse begins with Garavo cha nivato cha santuti cha katanyutta kalena dhamma savanam. Actually, the last sentence, kalena dhamma savanam, means listen to the Dhamma from time to time. Now you are listening to Dhamma, at least on the weekends. There's a listening to the Dhamma from time to time. But before that, kalena dhamma savanam, before that, we have put a garavo cha nivato cha santuti cha katanyutta. Why these so-called blessings are associated with Dhamma? Because to listen to the Dhamma, you must also have this foundation of virtues. Respectful, you must be able to respect your teacher, respect your friends, and humble so that you can receive what is being given to you. Contented means you are contented with whatever material beings, material benefit that you have. If we are too attached to material things, it's actually very difficult to listen to the Dhamma, because we want to divert our attention to, worldly things. So difficult, no time to listen to the Dhamma. And grateful, katanyutta, means we have to learn with a mind of gratefulness that I have the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma. Then discussion on the Dhamma. Here it says kanticca sovacha satta samanananca dasanam kalena dhamma sakkacha. Kalena dhamma sakkacha means from time to time, periodically, kalena, kala means time, kalena dhamma sakkacha. From time to time, we discuss the Dhamma. So just now it's talk about listen to the Dhamma. Now it's talk about discuss the Dhamma. That means you don't learn alone. You need to discuss, talk about it, debate about it. And the prerequisite here is you must be kanticca sovacha satta. You must be patient and obedient. Patient, obedient means be kanticca sovacha satta. Sovacha satta means vacha means words. Sovacha means good words. It means you are willing to listen, patient. Okay, so the obedient here means willing to listen, patient and obedient. And then to associate with monks. Okay, samanananca dasanam. Be able to see, the word dasana means see, to see the monks. But here it means to associate. Just like you go and see a doctor, doesn't mean you go and see a doctor. You go and get treatment from a doctor. So dasana, to see a monk, means to associate with a monk so that you can learn from them. Now the earlier verse, listen to the Dhamma, because in India in those days, there were no writings. So they use the word listen. Nowadays, with writings abundance, you have so many books and so many things in the internet for you to read. So listen actually also in the modern context includes reading. Okay, so I hope you understand this part. So from moral development, then after that listen to the Dhamma and then discuss the Dhamma. Then the next one, these are great blessings when you can gain enlightenment. It says here, tapucca brahmacharyacha ariyas cacana dasanam tibbana sachikriyacha. Means the last sentence here, tibbana sachikriyacha, it means realization of Nibbana. If you can realize Nibbana, that is the greatest blessings. Now here, Tapoche is talk about self-restraint, you know. If we have so many things that we want to do, and our minds run wild here and there, we cannot achieve many things. But if we can restrain ourselves and then live a holy and chaste life, that's brahmacharya, live a holy and chaste life, and be able to see the noble truth, and then finally the realization of Nibbana. That is the enlightenment, the highest blessings. Okay. Then the next one, actually this one you are enjoying the result. The result is pure and a peaceful mind. Okay, pure and peaceful mind. Puttas lokadamehi chittang yasana kampati asokang virajam kemang etang mangalam uttamam. Puttas lokadamehi means all the vicissitudes in life. Sometimes you are praised, sometimes you are blamed. Okay? Sometimes you are in faith, you have fame, sometimes you have fame. Sometimes you gain something, sometimes you lose something. Sometimes you are happy, sometimes you are sad. These are all, you call it the vagaries or the vicissitudes of life. When you have attained a stage where you can look at all these things with a pure and peaceful mind, it is a fortune. It is a kind of blessing. And we are free from sorrow, defilements. Virajam. Virajam means the defilement. Virajam, clean the defilements. Kemang means peaceful, fear, liberated from fear. So from this sutta, again, we see that the Buddha stressed, this is for the layman's life, you can see that we talk about at first human relationship and circumstances and evidence and skill about individual, personal self. Then the Buddha did not ignore that we need to go on our household life and occupation. But from there on, we move on to social service. Okay. Then we come back again to train ourselves spiritually. So just now, the first 5 you can say is material life, but subsequent here is about our spiritual life. So if you look at the Mangala Sutta, then we can see that it is about material life and spiritual life. It is about gaining peace and happiness from the on the other world when we attain Nibbana, but it's also talking about peace and happiness in this world. So from this sutta, it's very clear that the Buddha talked about daily living. Again, in this sutta, there's no role for atheism, no role for God, no role for prayer, never mentioned about prayer, never even mentioned about chanting. Okay, services, rituals and things like that. Okay, so this is about daily living. So to sum up, in our daily living, there is a very popular verse in Buddhism that says Satta tapasa akaranam kusala sapa upasampara sachitta paryodapanam etang mangalamuttamam, which means avoid evils, do good, purify the mind. This is teaching of all the Buddhas. So if people were to ask you, what would you Buddhists do? Buddhists basically do 3 things: avoid evils, do good, and purify the mind. Well, avoid evil and do good is found in almost all the religions of all the belief systems in the world. But to purify the mind, not necessarily so. To purify the mind is the emphasis that you can find in Buddhism. Because when your mind is purified, then only the so-called avoid evil and do good is meaningful. Otherwise, it's very dangerous. You can avoid evil, do good, but if your mind is not pure, the so-called good, just like some people believe that my religion is the holiest, the best, and things like that. If I kill you, I can go to heaven. So, because there's no pure mind, the mind is with defilement. So, if I kill you, you think it's good. See? So, there's a very important thing here, the purification of the mind. The mind must be free from greed, hatred, and delusion. Then only the avoid evil and do good does make sense. Okay. Okay, now, having said all these things, to prove the point that Buddhism is humanistic in nature, the next thing I want to say is But somehow or other, Buddhism actually became a religion. Although the Buddha started as a teaching that he preached along the Ganges River, walking up and down for 45 years, but eventually it became a religion. So as a religion, it is a theistic religion, or is it a theistic religion, or it is a humanistic religion? So to answer these questions, I want to share with you first is what is a religion? What is a religion? You know, the word religion comes from the Greek word re-lego. Re means again, lego means binding, binding again and again. To what? To a supernatural human being. Supernatural being, or to the so-called, we call God, or something like that. So if you say that is the definition, religion is a process of binding oneself to a human, to a God again and again, then Buddhism is not a religion. By that definition, Buddhism is not a religion, because Buddhism don't talk about binding. In fact, Buddhism talk about detachment, setting you free. So we must be careful when sometimes people ask, is Buddhism a religion? We must be able to tell, we must be able to first get the definition, because everybody got their own idea of what is a religion. So if a religion must be something that binds oneself to God, then sorry to say, Buddhism is not a religion. But on the other hand, if we treat Buddhism as a social institution, which is grounded in certain kind of a system of thought, then Buddhism today is a religion. Buddhism today is a social institution. It is a religion of the vast majority of the people in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, etc., Thailand, so on and so on. And it has become a social institution with temples, with monks, teachings, and things like that. So if you define it as a social institution, then Buddhism is a religion. Okay, it's a religion. But this religion is not something to do with God. Okay. The second point I want to share with you is the foundations of religions. How religions come about, the beginning of religions. Actually, if you scrutinize properly, religions come about because of the fear of the unknown. Because when we do not know the unknown, and in order to explain the mystery of the unknown, we have to come up with some explanation. So what we do is we have to come up with some stories to explain this unknown. Now, if you look at all primitive religions, all primitive beliefs, okay, in ancient societies. In ancient societies, most people believe there's a thunder god. The Greek has got thunder god. Chinese have got thunder god. The Indians have got thunder god. Because in the primitive societies, thunder, lightning, flood, fire, all those natural disasters were something that they fear, and they could not understand. So when there's a thunder, they believe there is some kind of mysterious power controlling this, but don't understand. So they use the word God. So you have thunder God. And if there's lightning, you don't understand, so you say there is a lightning God. And all this we have to explain in order to reduce our fear. But actually, certain religions actually capitalize on this fear. So today we are still fearful of God, because God is something that we really don't understand. But in Buddhism, we are not. Buddhism, we focus on the development of the mind, not to perpetuate fear, but to be enlightened. So we are not. We do not wish to tell people about this God and that God. This thunder God can hit you, that lightning God can hit you, or how you were created and things like that. But to train ourselves, to train our mind, so that we reduce our fear. And today, actually, with the advent of science, we know how water can get flooded, so we can build dams to create to mitigate the floods. We know how fire started, so we have all sorts of firefighting systems to prevent fire or to put off fire. We have human beings actually have done a lot of things to overcome this nature, but there are certain things that we cannot overcome, which continue to succumb to religion. So just now, for example, for the fear of the unknown, you must have some way of answering, especially if, let's say, you have a young kids asking you, you know, why lightning must come first before you have the thunder? Okay, what do you think so? Do you know why? Why lightning always come first before there's a thunder? I'm sure you know why, huh?
You want the scientific answer?
Huh? Yeah. No, scientific answer. Which one?
So, I mean, it separates air and it's the air coming back together.
Oh, your scientific answer is too complicated for me. Okay, everybody says light travels faster than sound. Okay.
And sound, yeah.
But you imagine, let's say 2,000 years ago, this question was posed. How would they answer? There's a fear of the unknown, but you have to explain that unknown. So the Greeks have a story. They say hammering means thunder means the thunder god banging his hammer on some kind of a rock, you know. So you got the thunder. For the Chinese god story, Chinese thunder god story, the Chinese thunder god story goes like this. There was a widow living with her mother-in-law, who is also a widow. Then this young widow is a very filial daughter-in-law. She would prepare the best food for her mother-in-law, but she herself would eat the worst, the husk of the rice, not the rice, the husk of the rice. Then one day, the mother-in-law, who was blind, who did not know all these things, one day, by chance, she touched the food of the daughter-in-law and realized that her daughter-in-law was eating the worst food, what you call the husk of the rice. So she felt so guilty of herself. So she decided that she would not eat her own food. So she took her own food and threw it out of her own heart. As soon as she threw it out of her own heart, the thunder god who was patrolling upstairs in the cloud saw this, and the thunder god said, "Oh, what a waste of food." So the thunder god straight away hammered the woman. So the old lady died. So the poor old lady died. Then supposed to go to hell, isn't it? Hit by thunder is supposed to go to hell. So she went to the hell. And the hell god checked the register, couldn't find her name there. You know, you're not supposed to be here. Then sent her to heaven. And then in the heaven, the Jet Emperor opened the court to investigate this matter. How does this happen? Then the thunder, and the true story was told. Oh, it was actually a mistake. The thunder god did not investigate. He found that somebody just abused the food, so he just hit her. So from then on, the Jet Emperor, the king of the gods, make a ruling. In future, before you hit thunder god, please, before you hit, get your wife, the lightning god, to use her mirror to check first. Make sure everything is okay, then only you hit. That's why from then on, the lightning must always come first. Okay? So I hope you understand now. Lightning comes first because permission must be given by the lightning god first. Okay? Now, if you tell the story like this, you make the people ease off their fear and explain things like this. And in fact, if you look at how religion comes about, all the religions have got a lot of things, mystery that we need to explain. So we need to explain, for example, the myths of creation. Now I want to share with you some myths of creation. This one I already mentioned to you just now under the what you call system of thought. In the system of thought, God created human beings sin. Then God had a plan so that if you worship Him, you would go back to Him. So we are using God as an answer to a lot of things. So religions, a lot of religions actually have this creation myth, and creation myth is not new. Practically every human societies have creation myths. So the Chinese have its own stories, the Indians have its own stories, the Abrahamic religions, the Jews have their own stories. So I share with you the Jew stories, with which you are already quite familiar. You know, one day God was feeling, probably he was feeling quite bored. So he decided that there must be some life on earth. So he took some earth and made a human being out and blow some air into him, and he called him Adam. Okay. Then after some time, God felt that, well, Adam alone quite boring also on earth. So he decided to make Adam go to sleep. And then when Adam was sleeping, he took one of his ribs, took it out of it, and again he made from that rib a woman called Eve. Okay. So gentlemen, please go home and check your ribs, see whether you are one shot or not. Okay. So now, after making Adam and Eve, both of them running naked in the garden of Eve, in the garden of Eden, so they were very happy there. Then in this story, suddenly there will appear a snake. I don't know when the snake appeared, but there was a snake. Then this snake told Eve, you should try the apple, you know, the apple. When you eat the apple, you will open your eyes. Then Eve ate the apple. After eating the apple, then she realized that she was naked and feel ashamed. So she started putting some leaves around herself. And then she told Adam, you should also try and eat that. It's nice. So Adam also ate the food, plucked the apple and ate the apple. When Adam was eating halfway, God came down, you know, and God shouted at him, no, no, stop. That's why the man's apple is stuck here. So all the men got one apple here. Huh? Do you agree? Go and check, you got one apple here. But this part of the story, I added one, not the original story, okay? The original story don't have this apple story, okay? Anyway, all the mix has got all the people, you know, they add stories from time to time, add more stories. So after that, God was very angry. So God said, okay, I punish the snake. From then on, you must always crawl on the floor. You cannot have legs to crawl on the floor. But we don't understand why now. They still got lizard. Lizard got 4 legs. Okay. Then if, since you did not listen to me, you listen to the snake, now you have to bear children, pregnant, 10 months, other 9 months now. And Adam, you have to go and work hard. Okay, so both of chase all of them out of the garden, and have to go and toil and suffer unsatisfactoriness or dukkha on this earth. And then if you repent, you can come back to me. So with these stories, we try to explain how the creation comes about. And people would accept the story and happily, at least we release from the anthropological point of view, we release our anxiety of not knowing what to explain. Now, of course, this story is a Jew story. If it's a Chinese story, I think probably there's no story, because if there's a snake around, probably the Chinese Adam would hit the snake and roast or cook the snake and eat it, and then there's no more story. Okay. Now, the Chinese also got its own stories, but the Chinese story is different from the Adam and Eve story of the Jews. The Chinese believe that at the beginning, this earth was just a big mess, darkness all over. And there was a man or God, we don't know whether it's a man or God, called Pangu. One day he suddenly woke up. He was in the egg, Suddenly one day he woke up and he started pushing the earth, pushing the sky up and the earth where he stood, and therefore appeared the earth and the sky. But he did not create human beings. Human beings were created by another person called Niwo. He's a woman. You see, the Chinese story, creation comes from woman. Whereas in the Adam and Eve story, the creation comes from God and is created man first. But in Chinese story, woman comes first. Well, the Adam and Eve story, you also have a problem because after that, Adam and Eve marry who? They must be incest. Brother and sister marry, father and daughter marry, or mother and son marry. Otherwise, how do you reproduce? And there's a problem. But in the Chinese stories, perhaps the Chinese were a little bit intelligent in this aspect. When Niwo is also semi-god. Semi-god in the sense that she has got a human face, but dragon body. So when Niwo started making human beings, original story did not say how he made. He just made human beings. Not one, many. But later story says he made human beings from earth. Okay? So again, you see stories keep on changing. When he took a branch and dipped into a pot of mud, he dipped the branch inside and then he just swung the branch and all the dropped down and became human beings. So all these human beings, a group of humans were made at the same time. So no problem of incest. Okay. So this is a Chinese stories. Okay. You want to know the Indian story? You want to learn the Indian story? Okay. The Indian story is found in the Buddhist scriptures, but whether it is true or not, we don't care. It is just stories. The story, that's why I use the term myths. Myths or mythology, myths. The Indian story is that this earth was originally darkness, like in the Chinese story, darkness. And then there were beings from the other world system, whom after passing away, they came to this earth. And when they came to this earth, they were flying in the air. Not like us now, we walk on the earth. They were flying in the air, shining, the body was shining, and they were traveling in the air and feeding on the foam of the earth, After eating, but after eating the foam for quite some time, then the body became very heavy and the foam also disappeared. Then they landed on the earth. So, and their shininess began to disappear. Then when they on the earth, it's a group of human beings now, they started planting crops and peas. Up to this stage, they are still single sex. They were still single sex, no male, no female. Okay, but as they started eating the grains, then some became male, some became female. And when they look at each other, they were attracted to each other, male and female. So when they are attracted to each other, then they cohabit, they stay together, and they have sex. And those people who were still not so prominent in male and female, they dislike this. So they chase them away, they throw stone at them. So whenever a couple get together, they throw stone at them. See, that's why nowadays when people get married, we throw flowers at them, right? Not more or less the same. Throw flowers at them. Now, then after that, they build houses. Okay, and after that, they have societies. Then the human race appears. So now, you look at all these stories, they are all about explaining how the human life came about, which actually is very difficult to answer. Because it is actually a simple answer to a complex situation. Suppose this is a mathematical equation. You don't have the answer. You don't know what to do. What do? What would you do when you have a situation like this? You put it equal to x, right? But is x the answer? X is not the answer. X is only an interim representation. Okay? So it's the same thing about the beginning. We do not know the beginning, the complexity of the beginning, we do not know. So we say it's created by God. God is equal to X, but God is still not the answer. It is just a representation. Okay? So, but in Buddhism, our answer is very simple. Dhammic, that is Dhamma. Follow the Dhamma. We only interested in what we are today, what we know today. What we do not know, we can always postpone. There's no hurry to know. Okay? And we have to acknowledge that there are still certain things that we do not know. Okay. So this is briefly from the Buddhist perspective. As a religion, when we look at the mysteries of life and all things, we call it Dhamma. Dhamma means nature. We say it's nature. For the theistic, they say it's God. But for us, God is also not the answer. God is just a representation, an interim answer. Okay. So today, I briefly mentioned to you, is Buddhism a humanistic system of thought? I discussed based on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Okay? You want to do a small revision? Well, first we talk about the founder. Okay? We want to stress the point that he's a human being who has gained enlightenment, and he's a teacher, not a surveyor. Therefore, it's very humanistic. Then we talk about a system of thought. The system of thought is about dukkha samudaya nirodha marga, or unsatisfactoriness, cause of unsatisfactoriness, cessation of unsatisfactoriness, and the way to the cessation of unsatisfactoriness. It is not about who created what, or God has a role here. Then we talk about the teaching. The teaching is about something that we can experience here in this life. Something that we human beings can experience here in this life. Then we talk about basis. The basis is human being is supreme, and we talk about cause and effect. Then the application in our daily living, again, we see a lot of emphasis is on how we live our life on a daily basis. And finally, as a religious institution, it is a Dhammic religion, a religion that talks about Dhamma, about the nature, and not a theistic religion, not a religion that talks about God. Okay? So from these 6 points, I would conclude that Buddhism is a humanistic system of thought. So probably your assignment will be, is Buddhism a humanistic system of thought? Please discuss. Okay? Okay, if you have any question, please put forward now. We have another 4 minutes or so. Anybody with any questions?
Teacher, will you give us the copy of your PowerPoint today?
I think Reverend Konyan will provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Anything else? Anybody want to ask any question? Okay, this lecture is only a prelude to the subsequent humanistic Buddhism. In the later part, I would request you to do 2 things so that you can follow the subsequent lecture better. Because we are going to talk about China. So the first exercise that you need to do now, you please take note. You please identify the 13th dynasty in China, the period from when to when. So that when I talk about Qing dynasty or when I talk about Tang dynasty, you know what year I'm talking about. Or I talk about Shang dynasty, Song dynasty, things like that. So please, maybe tonight before you sleep, you just Google the 13th dynasty in China so that you can have an idea the 13th dynasty. Okay. The second exercise that you need to do is you look at a map of China and identify some cities there, because we will be talking about some of the cities, and China is a vast continent. If you do not know exactly where the cities, so you may have difficulty understanding. So please have a map of China, and then please identify the cities. I will read to you now the city, so that you please note down. Number 1, Xi'an. Today, Xi'an. Xian, Xi'an. Okay. Number 2, Nanking. Nanking or Nanxing. Nanxing. Nanjing. Or Nanking. You see, Chinese word is already difficult for you. And yet we make it more complicated by having different spelling. To make it even more difficult for you. So, because we keep on changing. Now Nanking. Okay. Number 2, Nanking. Okay. Number 3, Shanghai. Shanghai, you know, number 3, Shanghai. Number 4, Canton. Number 5, Wuhan. Okay, only these 5 major cities. The rest I can relate with later. Okay, these 5 major cities. Okay. So if you have no question, then we have to end here. But I think the class is not so active because I got very little response, so I have to keep on talking.
I think a majority is just shy on the online thing. Yeah,
so do I. It's my first. I have been on Zoom meeting many times, but this is the first time I have to deal with all the student with your videos there. That's why I requested for the videos to be here, because previously when I talked to the Zoom, I was just talking to the computer. I was wondering whether there are people looking at me or not, or I'm looking at the people. Okay, so it will be better if you can treat it like a classroom so that it will be more enjoyable. Okay.
It's really easy to like walk over people and like talk over other people on the microphone though. Because a lot of times you don't realize you're talking over other people when you're talking. So that's the other issue.
Huh? I do not, you are talking. Some of you were talking.
If I am talking while somebody else is talking, I won't hear them.
Here's an example right now.
Yeah, there you go. So like,
I see.
Yeah, that's about the only issue. But yeah, well, we can work through it.
Okay. So